Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
Well, hello there. Thank you for clicking on today's episode. My name is Christian Taylor, and you are listening to the podcast called Tales of Music and Film. Now, in this recording, I'm going solo, and we are going to be talking about a trilogy that played a crucial part in my childhood, and it still means the world to me to this very day. What am I talking about? It is a superhero trilogy directed by the great Sam Rami. I am, of course, talking about the early 2000s Spider-Man trilogy starring Tobey Maguire. Now, I don't know what else I could say about this trilogy other than I think this is one of the greatest superhero trilogies ever made. I have watched all three of these Spider-Man films religiously growing up, and I wish I could see you guys listening to this, because I would ask you, show of hands, any late 90s children here in the audience who grew up on this trilogy like me? Because this trilogy, almost 20 years later, is still just as popular as it was then. These movies have so much love with its craft, and the story for each movie are each unique in their own way. There is so much love for this trilogy. And I just love the stories that it tells. But we're not going to be talking about the entire trilogy. I do plan on talking about each film separately, but the first one that I wanted to talk about is my favorite movie out of this trilogy, Spider-Man 2, because this year, Spider-Man 2 is 20 years old. It was released back in 2004. And today it's considered to be one of the greatest superhero films ever made. And I agree with that. Spider-Man 2 has always been my favorite out of the trilogy. I love this. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this movie is one of the greatest sequels ever made. Now, the Raimi trilogy, like I mentioned before, I've watched them so much to the point where I could recite every single line. This trilogy and its stories are so iconic. The characters, the actors who played them, this trilogy is so unique. And part of me is wondering if we're ever going to see writing and this kind of movie magic ever again, because these films really, really stand out even now. I remember every time I watched this trilogy, I had Spider-Man costumes that I would wear every time I watched them when I was a kid. I had the classic red Spider-Man suit, and I had the black Venom suit from Spider-Man 3. I would wear them all the time when I watched the films. It was like a rule. I really liked dressing up in costume every time I watched movies growing up. That was a good portion of my childhood, was watching movies in my house's living room, and then just dressing up in the costume, and then I would act out the scenes and everything, the fight scenes and everything. I did that all the time. And there is nothing really negative that I can say about this trilogy, other than the fact I wish we could have gotten that Spider-Man 4 that Sam Rami wanted to do. So, apparently, with Spider-Man 3, when it came out in 2007, there was a lot of studio interference, and they forced Sam Raimi to put Venom in Spider-Man 3, and he didn't want to do that. The original idea for Spider-Man 3 was that he was going to have Sandman be the main villain, and he was going to wrap up Harry's story. And that sounds perfect. He never wanted to do Venom. But of course, Sony was so focused on selling toys and merchandise that they interfered with Raimi's story and forced him to put Venom in the movie. Now, even though they made him do that, I still enjoy Spider-Man 3. Yes, there are too many villains, but he did find a good way to kind of balance them out, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, Spider-Man 3, it's not a bad movie by any means, and I don't think it deserved all the hate it got. Heck, Spider-Man 3 beats all the MCU films as far as I'm concerned. There's so much love and compassion in that story and life lessons that are very crucial for someone. Spider-Man 3, yes, it has some cringy scenes in it, absolutely. We all know the famous scene of the boy Maguire walking down the street of New York doing that dance. We've seen that time and time again, but Spider-Man 3 is not a bad movie. And I am really looking forward to covering it soon so I can help shed some more positive light on it because it did not deserve all the hate that it got. But anyway, due to the backlash that third installment got, now, Raimi did originally want to do a fourth installment, but unfortunately in 2010, it was supposed to come out back in 2010, but Sam Raimi, I believe due to all the pressure that he was under from the backlash that he got from Spider-Man 3, he canceled the project. And you can still find some drawings that were done of some scenes that he wanted to do. Now, the only things I know about this film is that it was going to feature actor John Malkovich playing Vulture, and it was going to feature Anne Hathaway as Black Cat. Now, those castings sound amazing. Like, I can really see those actors playing those roles, but now we may never know. Funny enough, those two villains were used for the current Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Vulture was played by, Michael Keaton in Spider-Man Homecoming. And then, we haven't seen Black Cat yet, but, and also, for Spider-Man 4, we all know one of the most famous B-movie actors of all time, Bruce Campbell, who played Ash Williams in the Evil Dead trilogy, also done by Sam Raimi. You see, Sam Raimi has a couple of things that he likes to do with most of his films. Is that, one, Bruce Campbell has a cameo in them, because him and Bruce Campbell are best friends. They went to high school together. And, the second rule is that Sam Raimi likes having his Delta 70s vehicle appear in all of his films. And in the Spider-Man trilogy, it was Uncle Ben's car, and you see it in the first two Spider-Man films. And anyway, Bruce Campbell was going to play Mysterio, and that villain was played by Jake Gyllenhaal in Spider-Man Far From Home. But you can find sketches of Spider-Man, taking Mysterio to jail, and Bruce Campbell playing Mysterio would have been perfect. It would have explained his cameos in the previous three films, like Mysterio was watching Peter the entire time. Like, that would have been a cool little twist, and I think it really would have helped, wrap some things up about this trilogy. And it seems that they were setting up to have Peter's professor from college be a villain as well, because he makes appearances in all three of the films. Peter's professor's name is Dr. Connors, and we all know he's the professor who lost an arm, and he was trying to develop technology to grow his arm back, and his technology transformed him into the lizard creature, and that this villain was used for the first Amazing Spider-Man film starring Andrew Garfield back in 2012. But I really wish you could have gotten to see, Raimi's full vision of what he wanted to do. Because I believe I read somewhere in an article that he had plans to make like 6 of these movies. And I wish you could have gotten Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6. Like, that would have been amazing. But you know what? I always like to pay attention to what we did get. And the fact that this trilogy even exists is nothing short of a miracle. So, yeah, Spider-Man 4, really wish you could have gotten to see it. But there is talk circulating right now, right as I'm recording this, that we may get Spider-Man 4 after all. I mean, it's just pure speculation at the moment, but I think there's still time to do it. I mean, the actors are a lot older, but I mean, that's okay. I've seen all kinds of superheroes, be played by the same actor decades later, so I think it would work. I really do. And I gotta say this right now, if we're gonna be taking a contest here on who the best Spider-Man is, so we have Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. Tobey Maguire will always be my Spider-Man and Peter Parker. He was such a perfect choice to play Spider-Man. Tobey is phenomenal, and he will always be my Spider-Man. And I really have a huge regret from my childhood that I didn't get to see any of these films in theaters, just because I was way too young. Like, I didn't start watching this trilogy until, I would say, 2007 when Spider-Man 3 came out, but I was really bummed that I never got a chance to see any of these in theaters, but I did get a second chance with Spider-Man No Way Home, because it brought back, all the famous Spider-Man villains. We had Green Goblin, Dr. Octavius, and Sandman from the Raimi trilogy, all played by the original actors. And then We had Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire make an epic return. Like, that Spider-Man film, I still cannot believe is a real thing. Like, it was everything me and the fans have been begging for years. It was literally everything we wanted. And seeing that film in theater, without a doubt, was one of the highlights of my life. You want to talk about getting a second chance. Like, that was the best one I ever could have asked for. It was everything I wanted, and it gave me so much closure that I didn't even know that I needed. So now we're going to be jumping into more facts about Spider-Man 2. So it was released back in 2004. The box office for this film was $795.5 million. So yeah, it was extremely successful. It was released on June 30th. Sam Rami was the director. It was produced by Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. It was distributed by Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures. And the cast for this film: Tobey Maguire. We have Kirsten Dunst, who plays MJ. We have Tobey Maguire, like I said, who plays Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Alfred Molina, who plays Dr. Octavius. We have James Franco, who plays Harry Osborn. We have Rosemary Harris, who plays Aunt May. We have J.K. Simmons, who plays Jameson, who is Peter's boss at his job. And then we have Magna Tavai, who plays Peter's friend at the apartment that Peter lives at. And lastly, we have Cliff Robertson, who plays Uncle Ben. Now, I'm telling you right now, man, I want to just give a shout out. Every actor who played the roles in this trilogy, I can't see anyone else playing them. Like, these movies have some of the best casting choices I have ever seen. And J.K. Simmons as Jameson, that could be on, like, the top 10, like, greatest casting choices of all time. The guy looks like he literally walked out of a comic book. They got the look down so perfectly. And Rosemary as Aunt May, she was so amazing in this trilogy. I mean, I think the only complaint that I had was that she seemed extreme. Like, the actress just at the time seemed way too old to be Peter's aunt. Because you need to remember, like, during this, like, you know, like, Peter is, you know, a high schooler. Shouldn't Aunt May be in, like, her 50s or something? Because, you know, the actress who played Aunt May in Tom Holland's trilogy was perfect because they finally got the age right. Because, you know, Rosemary was like in her 70s when they filmed this trilogy, and she was perfect. It's just that I just thought she was a little too old to be playing this character because it's like, you know, like Peter's a teenager, you know, like she's supposed to be like in her, like I would say late 40s, early 50s, but anyway, she was amazing at the role. And, you know, Cliff Robertson, he will always be my Uncle Ben. Like, he was so perfect as Uncle Ben. Like, amazing casting choice. And Kirsten Dunst is MJ. Now, I will admit, one of the things about this film that didn't age well was MJ, but I'll get more into that later. But, I mean, I still like the character, even though she drives me crazy. But, man, Kirsten Dunst, she'll always be Mary Jane Watson to me. Again, like, she was so amazing in this trilogy. I can't see anyone else playing her except Kirsten Dunst. Like, she was amazing. So, let's get to the plot here for a second. But, like I said, I'll get more into MJ and all that stuff here in a little bit. So, plot. When a failed nuclear fusion experiment results in an explosion that kills his wife, Dr. Otto Octavius is transformed into Dr. Octopus, a cyborg with deadly metal tentacles. Doc Ock blames Spider-Man for the accident and seeks revenge. Meanwhile, Spidey's alter ego, Peter Parker, faces fading powers and self-doubt. Complicating matters is that Peter's best friend Harry has big hatred for Spider-Man, and Peter's true love, MJ, has now been engaged to another man. So that is the main plot for this movie. And now that we just discussed the main plot, I want to start going into a little bit, like, why does the movie work so well? And I would argue it's the most real superhero film ever made. Peter goes through straight hell the entire movie, and Sam Raimi did not hold back in showing you like just how hard life can beat you over the head. You know, it's just like Peter goes through so many hardships throughout this film, and it's just like you just want to like go, you just want to like teleport into the film and lend the guy a hand, like just to give you an idea of all the hardships that he goes through. Like literally, the film opens up with him delivering pizzas, but he gets late to his next stop, and because of that, he loses his job. He is struggling big time at school because he's out saving people instead of being in the classroom. And even his teacher, you know, Mr. Connors, is heavily disappointed in him because he's showing that he has potential, but he's never there to learn. And Peter can't balance his Spider-Man life out with his normal life. They're intertwining with one another. Like, you know, a positive for Spider-Man equals a negative for Peter. And, you know, Aunt May is all alone. She's suffering a lot because, you know, it's been months. You know, no, by this time, it's been a year since Uncle Ben was killed. And Peter is still carrying the guilt that he was partially responsible for Uncle Ben's death. And the guilt is killing him. And, you know, MJ is tired of Peter by this point. She's moved on, and she's now a successful actress. Like the film opens up, we see a billboard of her in New York City. Like she accomplished her dream that she mentioned in Spider-Man 1 that she wanted to act. And now she's dating someone else, you know, and she tried hooking up with Peter at the end of the film, but he said he just wanted to be friends because he has to handle being Spider-Man and he has a bigger responsibility. So MJ's moved on, found someone else. I mean, Peter still likes her and everything. He just doesn't know how to express it. But MJ's tired of him. And Harry thinks that Spider-Man killed his father, Norman Osborn. And because of that, Harry is now resentful towards Peter because Peter takes pictures of Spider-Man and delivers them to Jameson that he can use, you know, to put in the papers. So Harry is, you know, not liking Peter very much throughout this film because of that. And Peter watches literally one of his heroes, Dr. Octavius, turn into a monster, and he watches as Octavius' experiment fails, and Octavius loses everything. And just to add on to this pile, Spider-Man is now losing his powers because of the enormous stress levels that he is under from all the stuff that he has, from like, all the baggage that he has to carry on a daily basis. It's catching up with him. And the side effect is that he's, you know, now losing his powers. And it surely doesn't help matters because the only way that Peter can pay his bills, like the only job that he now has, is that he has to slander his reputation. He gives these pictures of Spider-Man to Jameson, and Peter knows that Jameson is going to use these photos in his company's papers to slander and make Spider-Man look like a bad guy, but Peter has no choice. He has to pay his bills somehow, like, and he's basically helping Jameson destroy everything that Spider-Man stands for. Like, just think about that for a second. Like, holy cow. And everything that Peter goes through, the negativity, I mean, it hits, like, peak, you know, volume during John Jameson's party. And it's just, like, in 5 minutes, it's just, like, Peter's life just goes to crap, like, instantaneously. Like, and, like, he tries talking with MJ, and she just tells him, you know, you're fed up. She's fed up with him. She says that, you know, you never make it to any of my plays, even after you told me time and time again that you would go, and you're never there. You're nothing more to me than an empty seat. And it's just like, wow, well, thanks for that little comment there, MJ. And then on top of that, Peter's friendship with Harry basically has a falling out during the party because Harry gets a little drunk, and then he slaps Peter twice, saying that, you know, you stole my father's love, because in the first Spider-Man film, Norman was more impressed with Peter than his own son. Like, you know, Norman Osborn treated Peter more like his son than Harry. Like, And it was really sad to see, you know, and Peter, I think, was too naive at the time to notice. But anyway, you know, Harry slaps him twice, you know, and tells him, you know, that it's you're partly to blame for my father's death, you know, and then on top of that, you know, Peter finds out that the man that MJ is engaged to is Jameson's son, who is a famous astronaut, and this guy is the exact opposite of who Peter is. You know, like, this guy has his social life figured out. He has an amazing career going for himself, you know, and he's always there for MJ whenever she needs him. And he's everything that Peter wishes that he could be to an extent. Like, this whole party sequence is extremely hard to watch because I can relate to Peter on that, you know. Like, I'm pretty sure we've all been in that very position, you know, time and time again. And, like, you just are, like, we literally watch our hero break, like, and I mean, I think the final nail in the coffin was when Jameson asked Peter to take a picture of Jameson with his wife and son and MJ and all of them on the stairs. I think that was like the final nail in the coffin for Peter. It's just like, to say it was the worst night of Peter Parker's life, I would say is a big understatement. Now, I wanted to take a quick second to give a shout out. So there is a YouTuber that I like watching occasionally. His YouTube channel's name is called High Top Films, and he did a whole trilogy going very in depth with each of the Sam Rami Spiderman films. So I am getting a lot of information from his videos. If you guys want any more additional information, I highly recommend you go check out his videos. He makes a lot of superhero content, both Marvel and DC, and his content really stands out. I love his work, so I highly recommend you guys go check out his channel, specifically his Spider-Man videos, if you want any more in-depth analysis, because he explains the points way better than I ever could, because he's around the same age range as me, and he grew up with this trilogy just like me, so he says pretty much the same things, but he has way more additional information. Another point that I just realized is that the screenplay for this film, right? It basically brings up a question: why does Peter Parker want to be Spider-Man when being Spider-Man is literally ripping Peter's life apart? Like, he's a depressed nobody by this point, and he's basically lost the only human connections that he has left, and things are going to get worse. You know, you'd think surely that things can't get any worse, but they can, and they do. And Peter has this, like, imaginary moment where we travel back to that last conversation he had in the car with Uncle Ben before he was killed. And this whole scene is one of my favorite scenes in a superhero film. Like, Peter has given up. Like, he's broken. Like, he can't be Spider-Man anymore. His stress levels are now hit the highest they've ever been, and he just can't do it anymore. And he's having a talk with Uncle Ben like, I can't live your dreams anymore. I want a life of my own. Like, Peter is extremely sad because he knows he's letting Uncle Ben down. One of the last things that Uncle Ben said to him was that with great power comes great responsibility. Now, that is a magnificent quote that can be used for life itself. And Peter he's vowed to make Ben proud, and now he knows he's letting him down and telling him, like, I can't do this. I am Spider-Man no more. And it's a sad scene to watch, and we get that famous shot of Peter taking the Spider-Man costume to the trash can and just dumping it and leaving it there. And it's a full-on recreation of a Spider-Man comic book cover of Peter walking away from the trash can with the lightning, like, highlighting the mask just hanging there in the trash. Now, I don't remember what specific Spider-Man comic it is, but there is a Spider-Man comic with that exact cover, so that was a nice little homage. And on top of that, you know, later on in the film, when Peter finally tells, you know, Aunt May what happened the night Uncle Ben was killed, and that Peter let the guy go because in Spider-Man 1, Peter just thinks that he needs to make a ton of money to buy a nice car because that'll get MJ's attention. So he enters into a wrestling contest, and he lies to Aunt May and Uncle Ben that he needs to be dropped off at the New York library. So Ben drives Peter to the library and drops him off, and Peter then instead goes to the fighting arena to fight Bonesaw, was his opponent. And Peter won the fight, and he was only given like $100, and he was like, wait a minute, the newspaper said it was $5,000, and the guy was like, sorry, you were supposed to fight for 3 minutes, and you beat him in 2, so sorry, you're not getting it. Then Peter, of course, he was all angry at this guy, so he walks out the door, and then right as he leaves, another man walks into the office and points a gun at the guy and tells him to throw all the cash in the bag. Peter is at the elevator waiting for it to open, and a guy, the robber, runs out of the room with all the cash, enters the elevator, and Peter had a chance to stop him, but he wanted revenge, so Peter just let the guy go. The guy gets in the elevator, the doors close, and that's it. And the guy was like, why didn't you stop him? Now he's going to get away with my money. And then Peter's like, well, I missed a part, and that's my problem. And that was what the guy said to Peter earlier. So like Peter used the exact same phrase on the guy. Peter got what he wanted, revenge, and look where it gets him, you know? Because of that action, Ben was shot and killed. And Peter tells all this to Aunt May, and then she is just in complete shock. She just gets up from the dining room table and goes upstairs. So literally, by this point, Peter has lost all of his connections. Aunt May, MJ, Harry, like all the 3 main people in his life that he really cares about, now none of them talk to him anymore. He has hit rock bottom. And you think that, are things going to get any better for him? And then now we get to another scene that is a big moment in this film. And it was when Peter's friend, her name is Ursula, and she is the daughter of the man who owns the building, the apartment complex that Peter lives in. And she makes appearances in all 3 of the films. And she is one of my favorite characters, like, in this trilogy. Like, you want to talk about a beautiful human being? Ursula always has Peter's back. In every film, she never gave up on him, ever. Like, she is such a sweet soul. And I would argue she's a million times better than MJ, but I'll get to that talking point here in a minute. But anyway, you know, Peter's just... So let me set the scene for you. So the apartment building that Peter lives in is owned by Mr. Dikovich, and his daughter Ursula, who is she's around Peter's age, and she always has his back no matter what. Peter is all alone in his apartment right now, you know, conflicted, not knowing if he should go back to being Spider-Man or keep living his life. He doesn't know what to do. You know, Aunt May, Harry, and MJ are not talking to him right now. He feels all alone, and he has no one else to turn to. And he can't decide on what to do. And then out of nowhere, Ursula comes walking into his room, and she notices he's not doing well, so she asks him, like, do you want a piece of chocolate cake? Because one of the things that Ursula likes to do, she likes to bake in her spare time. It's kind of hinted in the first film that she likes to cook sometimes. And this is the first time in the entire movie that someone has come to check on Peter and asked him, like, you know, and ask them, hey, do you want something? You know, like, now look, this may seem like a small little thing to you, but it's like, Peter has went through so much heartache this entire film, and to finally have someone be like, you know, for someone to finally ask him, you know, like, just someone being nice to him, you know, for universe sake, someone's finally nice to him again, and a simple little, hey, you want a piece of chocolate cake, you know? So she sits down with him, he eats it, you know, and it's just, it may not seem like much, but this scene really means something to me, because I went through this exact thing. Maybe not in the same setup, but... So, let me tell you a little story about myself and why this scene is so important to me. So, in 2019... was a little bit of a hard year for me. So I had just finished my first year in college. So this would have been in August of 2019, and I was working at my first job. It was called Oak Terrace, and it's a golf resort, and I was hired to be a dishwasher, and this was my first job right out of graduating from high school. So by 2019, I had finished my first year in college. I was going to a community college called Lakeland Community College, excuse me, and during that summer in 2019, I was struggling quite a bit. Like the last year, school went pretty well, but I was carrying a lot of baggage. Like I was in a very bad spot emotionally because most of my friendships from high school fell apart and everybody just left me behind, and I felt extremely alone, and I was going through a lot of heartache at that time, and my stress levels were very bad because I was struggling, not knowing where to go with my life and not knowing like what to do in college. So at this time I was extremely lost. And I was kind of going through the same things that Peter was going through in college too. So Peter was extremely relatable this entire film because I was in his shoes because I'm only a year out from graduating college. And those first few years at Lakeland Community College were some of the most stressful years of my life because adapting to a college lifestyle, it was very tricky for me because I was very used to the high school lifestyle. And I tried reconnecting with friends and it didn't work out, and I just felt extremely alone, and I just didn't know like what to do with myself. And then during one shift, it was on my birthday, and I was out taking out trash, and then my boss walks out and says, "Hey, can you come in the kitchen and help me with something?" And I was like, "Okay." I walk in the kitchen, and then the entire staff is sitting there, and they all say happy birthday to me. And Connie, one of the main cooks, brought out a Texas sheet cake that she baked for me with a light up happy birthday on the top of it. And this moment, like, I'm not kidding you, I literally had tears coming out of my eyes because it was my birthday. It was my 20th birthday, and oddly enough, it was my golden birthday because I was born on August 20th, 1999. So it was my golden year of 20 years old, and the minute I saw that cake and everybody wished me happy birthday, I'm not kidding you, I cried. I had tears coming out of my eyes because I'd went through so much hardship the last year, and I felt like I was all alone. I would even go as far as to say I was slightly suicidal during that time. And the minute they brought that cake out, like, it reminded me right there and then that people can still be kind, that I need to get back on my feet and just keep fighting. Like, I have a purpose. I have things that I need to do, like, I can't give up. There are still good people in this world, and that inspired me to want to get up and just keep going. And it was a big moment for me. It's just something so kind as bringing out a birthday cake for me. It's just in that moment, it reminded me people can still be kind. So that's why that scene in Spider-Man 2 means so much to me, because I went through that exact same moment. And it may have seemed like a little thing, but it meant the world to me. And I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life. It was one of it felt like something straight out of a movie. But it happened at the right time because it brought my spirits back up, and I've been a way better person since. So that is why that cake scene in Spider-Man 2 has a very special place in my heart. Now, I would like the next talking point I'd like to get into here is just kind of going into maybe like one of the only negative things about Spider-Man 2, and I would say with the trilogy as a whole. I think one of the only things about this trilogy that didn't age well was the writing of MJ, Mary Jane Watson. So, like I said, I like MJ, but I have to say she is one of the only worst things about this trilogy, because look, now I said I liked her, but man, she makes me want to yank my hair out in all three films because she is so unfair to Peter in all three films, especially in Spider-Man 2. Like, now, I actually watched a little TikTok clip of someone bringing up the fact that MJ literally cheats on her partner in all three movies. Like, she flirts around with Peter in Spider-Man 1 when she was dating Harry. And she even kind of flirted with Peter a little bit when she was dating Flash in the first movie. Then in Spider-Man 2, she's engaged and she's still flirting around with Peter a little bit. And then in Spider-Man 3, she was dating Peter, and then she cheated on Peter when she kissed Harry. So it's just like in all three films, she can't stay loyal. And I never realized that. And it really makes me angry with how MJ treats Peter in every film. Like, she is so unfair to him, it's not even funny. Like, Spider-Man 2, like, she just does so many horrendous things to Peter. It's like, it would literally kill her just to take a step back and imagine Peter's, perspective. Peter is working a job, he is going to college, and he has to help take care of his aunt because, she's all alone. Like, MJ, it would literally kill her to be any somewhat understanding of what Peter is going through. Like, it's not fair, and she's extremely ungrateful. Like, she's not understanding in any kind of way, and she throws away their friendship just because Peter missed a couple of her plays when he promised he'd be there. It's like, did you not stop to think? It's like, wait a minute, what if something important happened? Like, maybe his aunt needed something, or his job, needed him or something. It's just like, she just jumps to the conclusion, that he abandoned her and decided not to go to the play. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, MJ, can you stop being so mean and naive for 5 seconds? It's just, like, I remember back in my college at Eastern, me and my roommate had a long discussion about this. Like, in college, like, you barely have any free time to do anything. Like, college, I was in like 6 classes, like 5, I would say 4 to 5 classes. And on top of that, I was working as a DJ, I was a podcaster, and I was also working for ESPN Plus, filming the sport games on our campus. Like, I had barely any spare time. And when you're a college student, and you're working as well, and plus you have a family member to take care of, like, you're not going to have a whole lot of spare time on your hands. And I cannot believe that MJ did not stop to think, like, for 5 seconds, just to be more understanding of Peter's life and his perspective on this situation. There are 2 sides to every story. Just saying. And going back to Jameson's party, right? MJ was, like, she hit peak evil as far as I'm concerned during that scene. When she said to Peter, and I quote, "You're nothing more to me than an empty seat." It's just like, Peter should have cut all ties with MJ right then and there. Like, Peter, how much heartache are you going to let this woman drag you through before you're just like, okay, I've had enough? Like, there are so many better girls that Peter could have hooked up with in this trilogy. And, like, and in that moment, like, MJ's lucky that she wasn't talking to me, because I would have cut all ties with her right then and there the minute she said that to me. Like, holy cow, man. Like, what? Like, yeah, what a nice thing to say to one of your only friends who has stood by you every step of the way, MJ. What a nice thing to say. It's just, wow. Just wow. And it's just like, in this trilogy, like I said, there are so many better options for Peter. Betty Brant at Peter's job, like, she talks to him and she supports him in all 3 movies. And she even kind of shows she's slightly interested in him. It's like, why didn't you go after her? Or like Ursula, she's perfect. Like, she's shown interest in you in the first film. Like, Come on. And then, you have Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man 3, who is a beautiful human being who actually cares about people, who Peter was helping her with her homework and stuff in college, and she was an amazing person. Like, why didn't Peter go after her instead? Like, these three women beat MJ by miles. Like, there's no comparison, like, at all. But Peter keeps going after MJ. It's like, why, Peter? This woman has treated you like crap in all three films, and it's just like, when is enough? Just, it doesn't help matters that she does nothing to help Peter in all three films. Like, she's always a damsel in distress, and she spends most of her time screaming her lungs out. Like, imagine Willie Scott from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Okay, now times that by 10. There's MJ for you in this trilogy. Like, she screams all the time. Like, part of me's wondering if there's, like, some montage where it combines all of her screaming scenes from the trilogy. That would be, like, an hour-long video. Sure would feel like it. Like, she does nothing to help in all the films. She's just a damsel in distress who needs saving in every single film. It's like, you're telling me they couldn't have thought to give her anything to do? Like, her only shining moment was in Spider-Man 3, right? Where she dropped a cement block on Venom's head to distract him so Peter could get free and start fighting him again. I think that's one of the only things that I can think of where she genuinely tried to help. Now, granted, here in Spider-Man 2, during the ending battle, she did try to hit Octavius with a board, but she failed miserably. But at the very least, she tried. But still, MJ is one of the things out of the trilogy that did not age well. It's just with the writing and everything. It's like I loved her as a kid, but now that I'm a young adult and I watch these films, it's just like, she's a horrible person. She's very evil, especially in Spider-Man 2, and she can't make up her mind on who she wants to be with. It's she's just not a good person to date, And she really just drags Peter down and kicks him to the curb. If I was Peter, I would have cut ties with her a long time ago and found someone much healthier for myself. Like, Peter deserves a way better woman than MJ. That's all I'm saying. Like, Ursula, Betty Brant, and Gwen Stacy, again, no contest. They would have been way better and more healthier choices for Peter Parker. Now, I want to talk about the main villain of this movie, Dr. Otto Octavius, played masterfully by Alfred Molina. Now, this is Alfred Molina's best performance. I can't imagine anyone else playing Octavius than Alfred Molina. When I remember sitting in my college dorm room during the end of junior year, and I remember getting on my computer and seeing that the first trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home had been released. Now, I'm not a Tom Holland Spider-Man fan at all. I did not enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home very much. So, but part of me was just like, alright, I'll watch it, see what I think. And the minute Dr. Octavius showed up at the very end of that trailer, I'm not kidding you, I got up out of my chair and I was running back and forth in my room. I was just screaming. I was legitimately screaming. I was like, no way! What is happening? Are my eyes deceiving me? Did I just see Alfred Molina back as Dr. Otto Octavius? Like, I had no idea what to think. Like, holy cow. That changed my whole perspective on Spider-Man No Way Home. And that alone, I wanted to see the film just for Alfred Molina's Dr. Octavius. That's how good he was playing this villain. He was born to play this character, just like Hugh Jackman was with Wolverine, or Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool, or Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Like, those roles are designed for these people. Like, no one else can play them. Like, this is it. No one is going to top their performances. Alfred Molina's Dr. Octavius is one of my favorite movie villains of all time. And he is one of the best things about Spider-Man 2. Now, the actor is not the only reason to why Dr. Octavius is such a magnificent villain. Sam Raimi and his team wrote him in such a way that is so unique, and just the writing for Octavius in this film is amazing because he's not your normal kind of villain. He's a victim. He's just being controlled by these arms. Like, what they're doing is they're enhancing his alter ego of wanting to complete the experiment of holding the power of the sun in the palm of his hand. It's enhancing that urge, and it's pushing him to do evil things. Like, he'll do anything to be able to do his experiment again, and this time make it right, because in this film, what happens is that he wants to create a perpetual sun to make renewable energy for the whole world. It's something like that, but the experiment goes wrong, and he gets hit with electricity, and it latches the arms to him, so now they're permanently stuck to him. And he let his ego cloud his judgment, and the experiment went wrong, and all he ever wanted to do was be able to hold the power of the sun in the palm of his hand, but the experiment goes wrong, so later on in the film, the arms enhance his urge to want to try again, and this time he wants to do it right because it's his dream. He will do anything in his power to make his dream a reality. And now we get to, so I want to take a quick minute here and discuss the ending of this film, because it further shows the writing of Alfred Molina's Dr. Octavius and why he's such a magnificent villain. He is the one who saves the day in Spider-Man 2, not Peter. Dr. Octavius is the one who destroys his machine and saves New York City. And how does this happen? Peter talks to him. This film doesn't have that standard ending that we've seen 1,000 times before of our hero beating the crap out of the villain and coming out victorious. Instead, Dr. Octavius was hit by electricity again, and he's sitting there laying in the water. The machine is spinning out of control. Peter has no idea what to do. The void is getting bigger, and New York City is slowly getting sucked in, and Peter's trying to think of what to do. So what does he do? He walks over, he pulls his mask off, he reveals his identity to Octavius, and Octavius is blown away. He's like, Peter Parker, because Peter Parker and Octavius met earlier in the film because Peter wanted to talk to him because he was writing a paper on him for college. And so he really got to know Dr. Octavius, and Octavius said something to him. He said, intelligence is a gift, and it must be used for the good of mankind. So Peter uses that again. He's trying to tell Octavius that he needs to help him shut down the machine, and Octavius latches one of the arms around Peter's neck, wanting to kill him, and then Peter, instead of fighting him, he goes, you once spoke to me about intelligence, and it's a gift to be used for the good of mankind. Then Alfred Molina's Octavius goes, a privilege. And Peter's like, these things, they've turned you into something you're not. And then Octavius is like, it was my dream. Then Peter goes, sometimes to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams. Now, this is something that Aunt May says to Peter earlier in the film, because earlier in the film, after Peter revealed to Aunt May that he was partially responsible for Uncle Ben's death, Aunt May forgives him, and she says this exact quote to Peter. Now, there are some speculation that Aunt May knows that Peter is Spider-Man, but it's not really, it's not like pushed like any further. But Spider-Man 2 maybe kind of hints that Aunt May might know that Peter is Spider-Man, which is why she says that quote to him. But anyway, he uses that same quote to Octavius, and it snaps him back to reality and realizing all the horrible things that he's done, and he realizes, he's right. So then he lets go of Peter, and Octavius says that he will destroy the machine by pulling the support beams out and drowning it in the ocean. And he gives one last look at Peter, and then he goes down to the underneath the machine and pulls the rods out, and the machine falls in the water, and Octavius sacrifices himself. This movie ends with Octavius being the hero to save New York City and not Peter. And when you see him drown, you feel bad. It's so sad because this guy is dragging his dream into the river, but he does the right thing and saves all those innocent people in New York City. So again, Dr. Otto Octavius is not a villain, he's a victim in this film, and he gets redemption at the very end, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. That whole ending scene of Peter talking with Octavius was such an impactful moment because Peter wins by using his words, not his fists. And I wish more superhero films would use this kind of, storytelling for the villains. Now we're going to be getting into some more things that I like about this film. And another thing that I wanted to give a shout out to are the swinging sequences with Spider-Man. Now, I'm saying this right now. This whole trilogy has the best Spider-Man swinging sequences ever put to screen. Every scene of Peter swinging through the streets of New York City is so iconic. It really feels like you're swinging with Peter. And the camera work for these scenes are insane. Like, you see the camera dropping straight down and then going back up to insane heights. Like, that's a camera doing that. And on top of that, they go back in and they re-add in Spider-Man digitally, but these swinging sequences are so just breathtaking. You really feel like, again, you're swinging with Spider-Man through the streets. And the Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield scenes get nowhere near as good as this. And I don't know why, but just these scenes work so extremely well. And our talking point that I wanted to go back to is going back to the message that I was saying earlier about people can still be kind and have your back. So we all know, this is a very famous scene in the Spider-Man trilogy where Peter has to stop the train. So earlier in the film, Spider-Man and Dr. Octavius had their last big epic fight, and it leads them to fighting on top of a train. And Dr. Octavius pulls the brakes off of it. He sets the train going full speed, pulls the brakes out, then jumps off. Now Peter looks way out in the distance and notices that the track ends. So he has a very short amount of time to stop the train from going over the bridge. So what he does is he goes to the very front of the train, shoots dozens of webs on both sides of the building, and hangs on for dear life, trying to slow this train down. And he uses every ounce of strength that he has to stop the train. And at the last second, the train slightly goes over the edge, but it stops. And Peter literally almost falls off the train because this guy literally used every ounce of energy and strength that he had to stop this train, and the civilians grab him and carry him back into the train. And it was just something so little, but it reminded people on who he's fighting for, his fellow New York City residents. It was just something so tiny as them helping lay him down, make sure he doesn't get hurt. Like the New Yorkers, they have Spider-Man's back, and they will always support him because they know that he's helping them. So again, in this moment, Peter is reminded, okay, this is why I keep fighting, to save these innocent people. And on a side note, I think this movie had the best Bruce Campbell cameo. Like, I really enjoyed this. So in the first Spider-Man film, he was the announcer during the fight. And in this one, he's one of the theater workers, and he stops Peter from entering the room where MJ's play is happening. He goes, "Sorry, sir. No one will be seated after the doors are closed. It helps maintain the illusion." I thought that was very cool and clever writing, because, he says illusion. Kind of, wink, wink, I'm Mysterio kind of thing. I just think that was the best, cameo by Bruce in the trilogy. It was amazing. Now, dude, the ending to this film, I have to say, though, it is good and maybe a little bad. So, MJ learns, at the very end of the film that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he tells her that they can never be, because Peter is always going to have villains, and that's going to put Mary Jane's, safety at risk, and he can't let that happen. So he tells her, like, listen, you need to marry Jameson's son, because he can be everything for you that I can never be. So he finally lets her go, and then he swings off, into the night, and MJ just looking at him with a sad look, trying to comfort one another, and she decides to not marry Jameson's son. Now, this is a movie trope that I wish would stop happening. So she literally leaves, Jameson's son. His name is John. So MJ literally leaves John standing at the altar. She runs out of the church in her wedding dress, and she runs to Peter's apartment to tell him that she still loves him. Now, look, I like this scene a lot, I really do, but I'm tired of films trying to make it look like that this is okay, and it's not. Like, so many films have done this, and dude, it's horrible. Whether it's the man leaving the woman at the altar or the woman leaving the man at the altar, it doesn't matter. Either way, it's extremely messed up, and it's not good. It's not romantic. That is just straight a horrible thing to do, and it's just wrong. And movies have been trying time and time again to make it look all romantic, that it's okay, but for me it's just like, no, it's not. Like, that is just straight up messed up. Like, can you imagine, like, being the significant other that gets left behind? Like, the wedding is all set up and ready to go, and then at the last second, oh, sorry, I don't like you anymore. It's like, that is horrible. So, again, that aspect I did not like. But, the ending scene of Peter turning around and MJ is standing there in his doorway. And she tells him, like, I want to be with you. This is my choice. And then we hear the police frequency channel saying that there's trouble in the city. Then MJ says her classic comic book line, "Go get him, Tiger." Peter smiles, put the costume on, jumps out the window, and starts swinging off into the sunset with the police helicopters around him. It's just like, dude, that whole scene was straight out of a Spider-Man comic book. It was everything. It gets you pumped. It's amazing. But I really enjoyed that small little shot of MJ watching Peter swing away, and she has that look of, oh, I'm alone again. It was that small little snippet there, but still, man, that ending scene of this movie is everything you want as a comic book fan. It's everything. And another cameo, so we were talking about the Bruce Campbell cameo. There is a Norman Osborn cameo in this film, and what's pretty crazy about it is that it was not originally planned. So we all know Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, who was the villain in the first Spider-Man film, played beautifully by William Dafoe, and he will always be Green Goblin to me. Again, no one else can play that character except William Dafoe, and I was really happy that Spider-Man No Way Home, the creative team behind that film, realized this and had Green Goblin be one of the main villains in that film. William Dafoe's portrayal of Norman Osborn is so amazing. It's so comic book accurate as far as I'm concerned. And he had a cameo towards the end of the film. So, a little backstory for you. So, Dr. Octavius and Harry Osborn made a deal that if Octavius delivers Spider-Man to Harry unharmed, then Harry would give Octavius the remaining tritium that would allow Octavius to try out his sun experiment again. So after Octavius and Peter had that huge fight in New York City, which was on the train, of course, Octavius won and brought Spider-Man back to Harry's apartment. And then Harry gave Octavius tritium, and then Harry unmasks Spider-Man, and he finds out that Spider-Man is in fact his best friend, Peter Parker. So then Harry is sitting in his apartment, conflicted, and that's when he sees his dad in the mirror in his house, and Norman convinces Harry to be the next Green Goblin, and then Harry finds the secret room, the lab, where Norman kept all of his equipment, and then Harry finds the green gas that will enhance his muscles and give him additional strength and everything. And the whole cameo of Norman Osborn was not originally planned. William Dafoe apparently at the time was staying in an apartment nearby where they were filming, and apparently William Dafoe just walked over to the set, and he just wanted to say hi to everybody. And I believe Sam was like, "Wait a minute, we could use you. Can we film a quick cameo with you?" And I'm sure William was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I am very grateful that circumstances worked out, because without that cameo, I just don't think that ending scene would have worked as well. Like Harry seeing his dad in the mirror, and then Harry throws a dagger at it and it smashes, then it reveals a doorway to that secret room that I mentioned earlier. And this scene just works so well, and Norman's cameo was crucial, I think, in making that scene work. And the other thing about that scene that I really enjoyed is that it sets up the next installment without needing an after credits scene. Now, the current MCU it's like their trademark, where it's like at the end of every film they have an after credits scene. But that's been a thing like way before, the MCU, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off did it, So, I mean, it's been a thing. Just now, it's extremely well known thanks to the MCU. But the Spider-Man films were too cool for that. They didn't need after-credit scenes. Like, the films did their jobs of setting out the next sequel perfectly without needing the assistance of an after-credit scene. Now, personally, I am tired of that cliche. Like, I think more films, besides the Marvel films, are now using this cliche as well. And it's an overused thing at this point. Like, I'm tired of it. But anyway, these films do a magnificent job of setting up the next installment without needing an after-credits scene. And one of the last things that I want to talk about, like scene-wise, is that Sam Raimi did, in fact, go back to his horror roots a little bit. So, even I didn't know this, is that apparently, I think some fans were a little upset with Sam Raimi that he was doing like superhero films now, that he just straight up abandoned his horror roots with like the Evil Dead films and other projects like that. So in Spider-Man 2, I guess he just wanted to remind people, no, the horror roots are still with me. They never left. And the scene that I'm talking about is right after Octavius' experiment goes wrong. He's in a hospital room, and you have all these workers trying to see if they can take the arms off, but they come back to life, but they just rip the entire room apart. Like, I remember being a kid, this scene scared the crap out of me. Like, it's straight out of an Evil Dead film. Like, there's even an Evil Dead reference where one of the hospital employees grabs a chainsaw and starts trying to saw the arm off, but that doesn't help at all. The workers get tossed everywhere. They hit walls. Stuff gets thrown at them. The claws latch on to one of their faces, like a face hugger from Alien. And, they just get massacred. Like, a lady gets dragged into a dark corner so you don't see what happens to her. Like, these people meet their end in a very horrific way. And I would say, man, for 2004 with a PG-13 rating, that film, this scene really pushed the boundaries of what can be done in PG-13. I'm surprised Spider-Man 2 kind of got away with a PG-13 rating, because, dude, that scene alone, holy cow, it was scary. Extremely scary, to say the least. So, yeah, Sam's just kind of reminding us, the horror roots, they never left. They're still there. And, dude, it would be a war crime if I didn't mention Danny Elfman's score. So, as far as I'm concerned, right, this trilogy has one of the greatest superhero soundtracks of all time. The music that Danny Elfman composed for these films, it is Spider-Man. The Spider-Man theme, Danny Elfman's Spider-Man theme will always be the definitive Spider-Man theme. This is Spider-Man's theme. No other themes composed by composers, they're never going to reach this. This is Spider-Man's theme. The opening credits for all three of these films is so iconic and epic. It gets you pumped and ready for the film that you're about to watch. Danny Elfman's Spider-Man theme sets it up for this grand event. It's incredible. The opening credits, the opening credits for these films makes me emotional a little bit. Like, this theme was my childhood. These opening credits setting up the film was so perfect and so unique. This music is just breathtaking. It makes me emotional every time I listen to it. Like, I remember one time I was on YouTube listening to a Spider-Man theme, and I was reading all these hundreds of comments of all these people who were like, raise hands if this is your Spider-Man, or raise hands to all the kids who grew up with this trilogy. Like, this is the definitive Spider-Man theme. And I'm just like, yes, I agree. You know, it's just, oh man. Danny Elfman is an amazing composer. Like, I don't think he's done one bad film score in his life. He's up there with John Williams as far as I'm concerned. He is one heck of a composer. Now, that's really going to wrap it up for Spider-Man 2. And as far as all I can say is, this is one of the few times I think I'm ever going to say this. Spider-Man 2 is a perfect superhero film. Even with the MJ parts I discussed earlier, this film gets a 10 out of 10 from me. This movie is one of the greatest superhero films of all time, and I will always watch it for the rest of my life. It's amazing. And I just have to say, happy 20 years to Spider-Man 2. And I just want to say to Sam Rami and to all the film crew and the actors who worked on this film, thank you for making my childhood so much better with this film. You guys did an amazing job. The whole trilogy, like Sam Rami, you did not let us down. All three of these films are amazing, and you should be proud of yourself. Spider-Man 3 is amazing. Your whole trilogy is perfection. Each film has an important message that still works to this very day. So thank you to everyone who worked on these films. Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest superhero films ever made. I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point. Just stay with me here. It's a masterpiece. Brilliant in storytelling. And this Spider-Man 2, just this movie, it beats the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe as far as I'm concerned. It beats all of them. Just this one film. It's better than all those films. All those 40 plus films they've made. This one film beats all of them. There is no comparison. No contest whatsoever. So again, happy 20 years of Spider-Man 2. And if you have not seen this film or even the trilogy, I highly recommend that you watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. It will not let you down. I promise you that. So that's going to wrap it up for the covering of Spider-Man 2. I hope you enjoyed this recording, and I am very happy that I finally got to talk about this. I am going to cover Spider-Man's 1 and 3 somewhere down the road. I don't know when, but it will happen. That I can promise. So I hope you enjoyed this recording, and you have an excellent day. And as always, my name is Christian Taylor, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.